In keeping with this year's One Book, One Bakersfield theme of Women Who Inspire, Women's March Kern County will feature a panel of women who have inspired our community. While there are many notable women living in Kern County, we have chosen to highlight a few who have been involved in the Women's March and their communities. These women inspire us to continue the fight for equality, started over 100 years ago by the women who fought for and gained our right to vote. We believe it is our responsibility to carry the torch for those who came before us and who have made the freedom we enjoy today possible. Guest Ana Cornejo. Ana is a first-generation immigrant from Mexico. While she was at Bakersfield College, Ana earned an AA in Human Services and Liberal Studies. She holds a BA in Liberal Studies from Cal State University Northridge and attained her teaching credential and her master's degree in curriculum and instruction at Cal State University Bakersfield. She is currently enrolled in the doctoral program in educational leadership at CSUB, where she also serves as advisor and lecturer to the teacher education department. Ana teaches fifth grade at a local public school, and she's an executive board member of the Teachers Association for her district. Ana is passionate about education and believes that every child should have access to an education that is rigorous, enriching, and empowering. Welcome, Ana. I'm so glad that you are here today.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
And I wanted to start out, this is our One Book, One Bakersfield project for the Women's March. And so I wanted to start out by asking you to share your favorite author or children's book.
I have many, but I would say if I had to just pick one, I would pick Esperanza Rising. This is a book that, I've had in my library for many years. And it's one of my favorite books to read aloud in the classroom. I often share with my students the correlation between the main character, Esperanza, in my life. If you don't know about the story, it's about a young girl who migrates from Mexico. There's some devastation that happened to her in her hometown, especially with her dad being murdered. And she is then kind of forced to migrate to the United States. And in particular, she lives in California. And then she begins her life as a farm worker. And while I didn't experience that, I definitely, experienced a lot of what is shared in the book. And then I think also what I get really excited about is when it talks about the surrounding areas in the book, like Arvin, and I think it even mentions Bakersfield. So obviously my students get super excited to see Bakersfield's name in print.
That is wonderful. What a great book. Ms. Munoz, who wrote that book, graduated from BHS. So thank you for mentioning that. Why do you march? Why do you march with the Women's March?
I march, I think being an immigrant, I really notice a lot of the narrative surrounding immigrants, and the current political climate has changed. Being a very proud immigrant, I feel like also as a woman, I feel as I am the first in my family to have choice. So I see how the women that came before me, my mother, her mother, they didn't have a choice. They were married very young. They had families very young. And a lot of their, lives were tied to that of their husband. I feel like I am the first one that has choice. And I think also along with being an immigrant, a lot of times there is some shame tied to it. There is also the idea of living in the shadows because you don't want to be, deported, because you can't afford to go to jail. When it comes to civil disobedience, we see that a lot of protesters end up getting arrested, being undocumented. You don't really, have that because you can possibly be, deported. Growing up in this community, now I've lived here longer than I've lived in Mexico. I think it's important to let people know that we are here, make ourselves visible, and maybe my mother can't do that or my grandmother, but I know that I can do that for them.
Why don't you tell us your story?
My story, I was born in Mexico, and my mother was married to my father, and it was an abusive relationship. And, for many years, she was married to him for many years, 10 years. And she reached a point where she said, if I stay, he's going to kill me. So I do remember her, I must have been 8 or 9 at the time. And she looked at me and she said, do you want to stay with your dad or do you want to come with me? She gave me that choice to decide, and I chose to come with her, and I feel like it's changed my life. She happened to remarry someone that lived in Bakersfield, and so we came to the United States, And then just being very young, not understanding what was happening, starting school here and not having the language. I have a stepbrother who's about my age. And I remember he was in third grade and I was supposed to be starting the fourth grade, but she felt that if we were in the same grade level, it would be easier for us to walk home together or even to be in the same class. She just thought that he would be a big help to me. So she kind of enrolled me in third grade instead of fourth grade. And I do think that helped me in the long run, to have that extra year.
That's wonderful. When did you realize that your life was different?
There was always the secrets, you don't talk about this, you don't share about this. If people ask you where you're from, don't say you were born in Mexico. Don't talk about that. It really put it into perspective when I got into high school. One of my good friends was taking classes at community college, at Bakersfield College. And, as a means to get ahead, like, oh yeah, I'll take my gen ed while I'm in high school. And I think I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to do the same. We'll take the get bus. So I decided to enroll in a class, and I remember looking at the tuition fee, and it was a lot more expensive than my friends. I, had to call financial aid and ask. I remember the reply I received was, oh, because it's an out-of-state fee. And I said, what do you mean an out-of-state fee? She said, because you're not a legal resident. And then later on, I found out that California does have laws in place. For example, AB 540. Once I graduated high school, I could prove that I was a resident of California and not have to pay those out-of-state fees. And yeah, it was really sad, because it was almost like one of the first roadblocks. It was like, I'm not a kid anymore and I'm becoming a young adult. And I know that I'm going to have to work a little bit harder for the things that I want. Things are not going to be as easy for me because of my status.
And so then your journey led you to being able to achieve your education. How were you able to do that?
After that, I feel very fortunate that I feel a lot of things kind of lined up for me. So in community college, I had access to in-state tuition and scholarships, private scholarships. And then once I was ready to transfer, that was around the time that President Barack Obama signed the DREAM Act into, the executive order. So then I was able to apply for DACA. And through DACA, that's how I was able to receive a work permit and work legally. And I was also able to apply for a driver's license, which is, another one of those little roadblocks. I see all my friends getting a car and driving. So I was able to start driving to Northridge. And that's where I went to school to earn my upper division and then eventually my bachelor's. So that was a big help to me, qualifying to be a DACA recipient.
Now you're enrolled in the doctoral program. Congratulations. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you. I did my research and I've read that, it's not an easy program and it does, you do sacrifice a lot. Like you really have to want it. You don't do it for the wrong reasons because it's something that's really going to test you. Every year I have an attention getter that I like to use in the classroom, which is when I say, welcome back, scholars. And my students say, it's great to be back. And, I have one or two hands that are like, Ms. Cornejo, what is a scholar? So I always have to, explain to them a scholar is someone that lives to learn and loves to learn. And I just really want to embody that and share, that, it doesn't have to stop after high school or college. You can keep going to school and earn degrees and just become really well-rounded in the area that you're interested. For me, it happens to be education. That's just become my passion for the opportunity to work with other educators in Kern County. And
you get to help them also with their union issues. I see that. What was the best decision that you've made that has changed your life? While
maybe a little bittersweet, I think the best decision that I've made was following my mother and coming to the United States. I just think, like I said, a little bittersweet because I've encountered, some setbacks, but at the same time, I just feel like, I just have been able to be granted opportunity and just the whole idea we talked about, the idea of the American dream, literally embody being a dreamer, use education as a way for mobility and a way to also impact the community.
So inspiring, your story. Who are the activists who you look up to?
Well, I think the first one that obviously comes to my mind is Dolores Huerta Dolores, I believe, knowing her history, she was a teacher as well, so she has the education background, and a woman among men. She's just a leader, and even now, at her age, she continues to fight. I mean, I saw that picture of her marching with teachers in LA when they were having their strikes, and I just admire her immensely, for all the work that she's done and she continues to do.
What is your motto? Inspire to or give down to your students in your classroom?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the words of Dolores, sí se puede, sí se puede. My mother, that's who's taught me, you just keep working for what you want. So I think Dolores puts it into a motto, sí se puede.
Anna, what do you consider one of your greatest achievements? What do you want to be known for?
As an educator, foremost, just being known as someone who was good at what they did. And I think of my role in the classroom and in having students, building those long relationships with students where they're not just my students for 1 year, but students that I can come back and visit me, or now it's through email. I have former students who email me and they want to know how I'm doing, and they let me know what's going on in their lives. I have a student that is now a freshman in high school, and she said, you should be a ninth grade teacher so you can be my teacher again. I just know that they enjoyed their time working with me, and I know that I have too. So it's just having those long relationships with students where, I've made a positive impact in their life.
But I would like to thank you for being here this afternoon. Is there anything else that you would like to add that I might not have covered?
In the theme of, marching, I remember the first year that I became aware of the Women's March. I remember that I had to take a bus. We, as a group got together and we took a bus to Los Angeles. And the following year, brought it to Bakersfield, and I didn't have to go all the way to LA 2 hours. It was here, and to me, it was very overwhelming. Not only because I was a speaker that day, but just the idea that my community has my back. Just knowing the history of Kern County and of Bakersfield, and just how some things are not always as positive. That idea that I came out and I saw so many faces and that support from the community. And, when you are vulnerable and you share your story, there's always a possibility that someone might look at that and see it in a negative light. But that day I just felt embraced by my community. I felt that, whatever happened with the new president, that at least I know my community would have my back.
We do. And we thank you so much for sharing your story today. It's such an important one, and your message is such a positive one. You have really worked to be an inspiration and inspire these youth that pass through your classroom doors. And when you speak to us in our community, we appreciate your voice because it's a voice that needs to be heard. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Crimson. In recent months, we have seen the Black Lives Matter protests increasing. This awakening has led to the examination of systematic racism in our nation, abroad, and in our community. In response to the death of George Floyd, Crimson Skye Hochhalter, a 24-year-old activist, college student, real estate broker, high school tennis coach, philanthropist, and local musician, organized a peaceful Black Lives Matter sit-in at our local Mill Creek Park this last spring. So welcome, Crimson.
Thank you.
And so I wanted to ask you, why do you march with Women's March?
For me, it's a way that I can get involved physically, actually get out in the streets and, stand up for multiple things that are serious issues, not only in our community and locally, but all over the nation, all over the world, really, civil rights, immigrant rights, environmental justice, LGBTQA rights, systemic racism, all of that stuff needs to be addressed. But especially as a female, having the opportunity to go out there for the Women's March and encourage other women to do what they can to make a difference, and just try to recognize the power that they do have, that was stifled for so many years in history. It's a good way for me to actually get out there and get involved.
I want to know a little bit about your story. You're usually our go-to person for music in our community, but why did you put together the Peace Rally?
I do like to do those things anyway, just come together with music in a peaceful way. And usually it's in a lighter way. You know, I'm not speaking on certain topics in the way that we were at the sit-in, but it just felt like something had to be done in our community after the death of George Floyd. You know, the whole nation, the whole world was shook, and including my community. And I think people just didn't know how to respond to it. I didn't know how to respond to it. You just feel helpless and hopeless. Like, this shouldn't happen. Why is this happening? What can I do about it? And what my strengths are, and how I can help my community just kind of come together in a peaceful way. It definitely felt like a way to heal, and everyone definitely needed it. I needed it, and everyone else that was there needed it, and you could tell. And really, we should do things like that more often, like come together, have some art, you know, poetry, spoken word, a little bit of music, and touch on these things that are so important. But it was one of the best things that I've ever done in my life, really. It was a great, great event.
I loved it because for me, I felt safe. It was peaceful. It was socially distanced. People were wearing masks. People came with their children, having picnics, evening picnics. So I really enjoyed what you did there for our community.
A very eclectic audience, and it was so quiet, and it just felt so peaceful. Like, I haven't really ever felt anything like it, actually. You know, it was a really special day, but I think that everyone understood the intention. Nothing good ever comes out of anger. You know, we can't make the progress we want to make if we come at this with anger or hostility, even though it's okay to be angry. I'm not saying we shouldn't be, because that's a very valid emotion, but we can't react with that anger. And sometimes we have to feel it, you know, and then do certain things like this. Get together in a peaceful space where we can say things, get it off our chest, and be heard and be understood, so that we can then move forward, you know, without that tension.
Everyone needs a park where we can come together and sometimes speak our piece.
It's a good spot.
What is your idea of perfect happiness?
Something kind of like that, you know. I think everyone felt that, like, man, if this could just last forever, we probably wouldn't have these problems. Because, I mean, we just need to respect one another and accept one another. I mean, it's a couple things that seem so basic, like just those two things alone, respect and acceptance, instead of feeling threatened by people that are different from us in whatever way. We have to understand that we can live our lives and someone else can live their lives completely differently, as long as we're not putting each other in danger or in harm. There's no issues there, but that takes respect and acceptance. And so those are two key things that for me kind of would create sort of a utopian space. And that's what was there that day at the sit-in. In my perfect world, it would be if humans could just realize that we're all one race, you know, like we've actually tried to separate ourselves into races, and we call it that. And that's just not even the right terminology. Like, it's kind of, we brainwashed ourselves, you know. It's like we are the human race. And this exterior skin that I have is literally a protective organ. And that's all it is, you know. And it's just the outside, and who I am is the inside. And I wish that those three things, respect, acceptance, and just understanding that the human race is all one race.
I think those are all wonderful, but I think also we need to also meet forgiveness in that collection.
Forgiveness, absolutely.
And I've been wanting to ask, you've accomplished a lot in your very young life. What's the best decision that you have made that has changed your life thus far? Because you seem very positive.
Well, I think things really started to happen for me when I made the decision to become a full-time artist, like to really believe in myself, like this is what I am, this is who I'm going to be, put all of my time and effort into it. It almost felt like a day's decision that it happened, you know, and since that day, I just feel like I've been on the right path. That definitely feels like one of the best decisions I have ever made, because I wouldn't be everything that I am, you know. I wouldn't be as positive, I don't think, even though I'd like to think I'm a positive person anyway, but I just wouldn't be as happy because I took a leap, in believing in this dream. It was that fear of saying what if, because I did have this dream, and it was like either I could go for it or say what if, and I just did not want to do that. And I know that some people live their whole lives without taking that leap, and sometimes have regret later on in life. And I just didn't want to have that. And I'm so grateful that things have gone well enough for me to be able to continue this way and not have to set it aside, and I've actually been able to keep doing it and add other passions. I've been so blessed.
That's wonderful. I know you love music. I know it's a big part of your activism. And I know you performed for the River Walk for the Bernie Sanders rally, and you've performed at the Farmers March. I've seen you out at other community events promoting different passions that you have. So what is your favorite music?
I tend to really connect with certain artists rather than genres. I do like music that has an intention and a purpose and speaks about things that matter, instead of just whatever trivial things. I think that music is so powerful. We should use that power to talk about important things. So I like that kind of music. People like Bob Marley or John Lennon, the Beatles. Those are two huge ones that definitely used music to speak to the people, speak peace to the people. Alicia Keys, just anybody, Billie Eilish, anybody that's kind of, standing for progression and respect and acceptance, these things that we've been talking about. Opeth is one of my favorite bands. I'm sure most people haven't heard of them because they're a Swedish band. What I love about their music is that it's pretty progressive. So rather than having your 3.5-minute formulaic song, they might have a 13-minute song or an 8-minute. And so I like music that also catches me off guard sometimes, is innovative.
Well, will you share some music with us today? Something that will inspire the activism in our viewers?
Sure. One of the songs that I have been playing at, I did play it at the sit-in. I also played it at a couple other places recently that were, activism work kind of. This song just kind of speaks a little bit on everything that's happened in 2020 leading up to everything that has recently happened and how it can be hard to know what's actually going on. This song is kind of about that. It's called What's Happening. I've been looking down the road at what lies ahead. I've been looking down the road at what's happening. What's happening? What's happening? I took a walk with Mother Nature, just a stroll. Tried to tell her I don't know why we've come so far and so below. Close my eyes and wait. Wait. I had a talk with Mother Nature, no need for words, just a taste of the universe. Wisdom in the human race. Close my eyes and wait.
happening? Trying to hold my own. What's happening? I don't know why. What's happening? Trying to hold my own. What's happening? I don't know why. Nothing I can do but speak my mind. Yesterday was a cry. Now I'll use the voice that's mine. Close my eyes and wait.
So much. I love that. And use
Live and
I appreciate what you've done for our community. I am really glad that we were able to connect virtually this afternoon. And I'm so proud of you, and I love watching you walk in this world. It's just been a joy getting to know you these last few years.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Julie Sepulveda Gibson, founding member of the Kern County Women's March and loyal follower of the One Book, One Bakersfield project. Our Women's March project is called Women Who March. And I'd like to welcome our guest, Dolores Huerta, president and founder of the Dolores Huerta Foundation and co-founder of United Farm Workers of America. Dolores Huerta is a labor leader and a grassroots community organizer. And in 1962, Dolores and Cesar Chavez founded the United Farm Workers Union. In 2002, she received the Puffin Nation Award for Creative Citizenship. She has also received numerous awards, such as the Eleanor Roosevelt Human Rights Award from President Clinton in 1998, and in 2012, President Obama bestowed Dolores with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the United States. Welcome, Dolores.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me.
Can I start by asking you, since this is a library project, do you have a favorite author or a favorite book?
Oh my goodness, I have so many favorite authors. Way back when I was a kid, I read everything that Pearl Buck ever wrote. And of course, I love Toni Morrison. I think I read everything that she wrote. Isabel Allende is another one that I love. Julia Alvarez also. More recently, I had a wonderful read with Christella, who wrote a book about her life. And that's a really important book because she grew up in such dark poverty in Texas. And she talks about, how she really learned off of television. The television was her teacher because her mother always had to work so many hours. I just read a good book too called Luz, L-U-Z, by Rebecca Thomas. And this is a story about how these two girls from Guatemala found their way to the United States of America. And it's kind of like the typical immigrant story with tragedy, a lot of violence that they had to be subjected to, and how they finally made it to the United States of America. But it was the book was written so well that you really couldn't put it down. One of the books is an anti-racist book. The other one, I'm reading Mary Trump's book about the president, about her uncle. And that is very revealing because this is like coming from a family source that really tells the whole story of the whole Trump family. And we wondered Gloria Steinem came out with her book, and now it's going to be a movie.
Glorias.
Coming out on September 30th called The Glorias. And then Jane Fonda just came out with a new book, and this is all about climate change and about her work with her Fire Drill Fridays that she's been doing. Over 2 million people have been involved in the Fire Drill Fridays, and the name of her book is What Can You Do? You know what I mean? Because this is like a call to action from Jane Fonda, what to do about climate change. And by the way, all of the proceeds from her book are going to Greenpeace, the organization that is always working on climate change.
I wanted to ask you a question. When you were younger, what sparked your activism?
I think I was always an activist because I was a Girl Scout for 10 years of my life, from the time I was 8 until the time I was 18 years old. In the Girl Scouts, you learn about service to others and also about taking care of Mother Earth. I think those were very, very strong directives for my life. And so I owe the Girl Scouts a lot for kind of guiding me in terms of my philosophy of working for others and also being really careful that we treat Mother Earth the way that she needs to be treated. And then as a teenager, I was also very active. I formed a couple of clubs actually for teenagers in a storefront. My mother had friends and they gave us a storefront. But the police actually shut our club down because they didn't want to see us interracial, because we had Chicanos and we had Asians, Filipinos, Chinese, Japanese, and African-American groups. In our group, we had these wonderful centers that I actually organized. We had a jukebox and a ping pong table, and we had games where people would come and play, and we would have dancing contests. But then the police shut us down. And the reason the police shut us down is because they didn't want to see these Anglo girls hanging out with Mexicans. So I guess I've always been an activist in many ways, but to become an activist, of course, and to become an organizer, that's a whole different level of activism. And I learned how to do grassroots organizing, and of course that opened up a whole new world for me.
Will you tell us a little bit about what your organization does? Because I know you teach people this. Does it focus primarily on the needs that are not being addressed right now?
Yes, well actually the Dolores Huerta Foundation, our main goal is to develop leadership from the people that live in communities, and we're looking for those people that are really the most needy, maybe the most discriminated, people that maybe don't have a high school diploma or never had a chance to go to college, and to get them really to grow their leadership, to make them understand that they have the power to make changes in their community, even that they have value. And if they get engaged and they get together, if they take direct nonviolent action, that they themselves can actually make the changes that they need. And so we have been very successful in the past, especially in South Kern, where we were able to get street lights, sidewalks, gutters, a swimming pool, brand new gymnasium in Weed Patch for the school down in the Sunset Middle School. We got a brand new gymnasium. But the thing is that the people did all of the work themselves. And when people get engaged this way, then this is how they develop their leadership, and they really know that they have power to change things. So, and by the way, Julie, I know we're talking about the Women's March, but almost 95% of the people that we organize are women, and we're active in 4 different counties right now. We're active and we recently have been very active on COVID-19 because we raised money, and we've been able to give close to $300,000 out to so many of these families that are in need because of COVID-19.
That is wonderful. It really is changing the scheme of way we do things today. So you're focusing on a lot of voting right now. So how are we doing it differently in the time of pandemic?
Right now we're focusing on registering people to vote, and of course we're having to do everything virtually. I think that we will be doing some canvassing as we get closer to the election and going door to door to get people out to vote. We will also be sending out voter guides as door hangers. When we talk about the different propositions, one of our big focuses right now is Proposition 15. It'll bring in actually $12 billion into our school system, not only the community colleges, but also the elementary and the high schools, and it'll also bring money to our local communities. The opposition is saying it's going to affect small businesses, but it doesn't, because basically the money for that $12 billion is going to come from these big corporations that are not paying their fair share of property taxes. There was a time in California where we were like 1 or 2 We were the state that gave the most money per student in education, and now we are number 36 in the whole United States of America. And Proposition 21 is so that local communities and local cities can pass ordinances to have rent control. Because right now, you might say that the rents are kind of out of control. Any landlord can raise the rent as high as they want. And this is very, very, has devastating effects on so many people. And we see so many more people that are becoming homeless because they can't afford to pay the rent. We're hoping to get that. We have a couple of others too, like affirmative action. And this is important for women because before they passed Proposition 209, way back in the day, all of the government contracts had to be they had to have some contracts going to women and to people of color. I think at that point in time, it was like 14%, which is not very, very much. They didn't even want to do that, so they passed Proposition 209 to prevent the state from giving and a public agency from giving contracts to women and people of color. We still have many, many places like UCLA, for instance. I should say it'll also say it'll open the doors for people of color to be able to get into our universities and into our colleges because we still are not represented there the way that we should be, our folks of color.
Such a need for all of our kids to get educated. So if you had this opportunity to bring together, let's say 25 young women, and they all want to become activists, where do we start?
Oh, that sounds like a dream there, Julie, to do that. Yeah, we just have to let our young women know that being an activist is so important because, especially right now, because we are the ones that can determine, what their future looks like. Right now, we're going to be very busy in voting and, getting people to go out there and to vote because the people that we elect are the ones that make the decisions for us. And so it's so important that we all get to vote. And I like to say to all the young women out there, the best way to learn about politics is by getting involved in a campaign. Pick some campaign for somebody that's running for office, somebody that you like, get involved in their campaign. That is how you learn to do the political work that needs to be done. And a lot of it is just right now, especially in our virtual world, it's just telephoning, calling people, reminding them to vote. Making sure they have a plan to vote, make sure that they're registered to vote. This is going to be so important because so many things are riding on this election, like women's reproductive rights are riding on this, healthcare is riding on the election, whether people in California, if we can keep the healthcare system that we have and then make it better, this is all going to be happening in this election on November the 3rd. So this is a beautiful, beautiful time to become an activist. And when you become an activist, you have a whole new world that opens up for you. You're going to meet a lot of great people and you know that you're making a difference because you are then really taking an active part in our democracy. And our democracy can't work if people do not participate. And, it only takes a few minutes to be an activist. Michael Moore said, I actually saw him in person say this. He said, when we wake up in the morning, we wash our face, we brush our teeth, and then we call our congressman. Okay? So to call your state legislator or to call your congressman, it only takes a few minutes to do that. Well, when you do that, you are being an activist.
And as a mother of two, and I know you have some wonderful sons yourself, it's also important for young men to become activists. What has been the best advice that you have been given? And it doesn't have to be...
I think the best advice that one of them is what my mother said to me. Whenever you're doing something, whenever you have to make a decision, think of what you are doing, because, we choose how we're going to spend our time in our life. Think of what you're doing, how much of a difference that will make 50 years from today. Another good advice is always be who you are. You don't have to pretend you're somebody else as you go through life. You're in different situations. And especially for women, I think sometimes feel, maybe I don't belong here. And we have to say, no, we as women, we need to be everywhere, especially on those boards where decisions are being made. Always give yourself a lot of value. And if we go to a meeting or somewhere and we see a dais and there's no women up there, we have to go up to the leaders of that organization and say, hey, where are the women at? We need to see women up there. And the other thing I think is don't quit. Whatever you strive for or that you want to do, don't quit until you really, are able to achieve what you like. Because a lot of times it's kind of hard to get what we want, and we have to take a lot of detours on the way. But when we do detours, we're also always learning something new. And don't be afraid to make a mistake, because this is where we get our biggest lessons from our mistakes. I like to say to women, if there's an opportunity out there, and there's a job that you would like to really get, where you think, oh, I'm not educated enough in that particular field, or I don't have the experience, I just say to women, do it like the guys do, pretend that you do, and learn on the job.
What do you see as your legacy, either to the world, to our country, or even just our community?
Well, I hope that my legacy will be one of trying to organize people and empowering people to let people know that they do have the power. And, right now we're in a democracy. Our democracy is somewhat threatened, but we can't have a democracy unless everybody participates. And that is so important. So we never should think that I really can't make any kind of a difference. My vote doesn't count. If I don't go to that particular meeting, it doesn't make any difference. No, all of us, we are very valuable human beings. And we have to, when we participate, we're actually not only helping ourselves, but we're helping our families, we're helping our communities. So just think of all of the power that we have as individuals. And I think that's what I want my legacy to be, that I try to empower people, have them become activists, have them take leadership. And so when we leave this planet, we want to make it better than what it was before. Engage your family, engage your friends, and even if they give you some pushback, we know that this is our task. We have to save our world. Always continue to fight for the rights of women, the human rights of women, also the human rights of our LGBT community. We have to fight for our rights, reproductive rights for women, and making sure that women are at the table. And also fighting for racial justice so we can get rid of the crazy discrimination that exists right now. Julie, I just have to share Coretta Scott King, her saying with you, and she said, we will never have peace in the world until women take power. We're also going to be working on the Equal Rights Amendment for women. A lot of women don't realize we don't have an Equal Rights Amendment, and we are only one of a handful of countries that have not signed this amendment. But now we are in a very good position to make this happen because the state of Virginia was the 38th state to vote to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. So now we have to wait, just get the United States Senate to do this, and then we will have in writing at the United Nations equal rights for women. Okay, so we can do that. Si se puede. We can make it happen.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the beliefs, all the rights that really are the Women's March Unity Principles. Our group was founded back in 2017. That's what we looked at, is who needed protection, whose rights did we need to focus on, and so that we could move forward equally. So I have one other question for you. As you look back over your life, you've had a wonderful life. You've been so giving. Did you live up to your own expectations that you put there for yourself? Did you meet or exceed the vision that you had for yourself?
Oh, I have to say that I think my vision changed as I got involved in organizing. I initially, like many of us, I just thought that I would kind of lead what they call a quote unquote normal life, being a mother. And I am so grateful that the world of activism and the world of organizing opened up for me, because I think I would have been so bored had I just had what they call a normal life, And not to put anybody down, because I think that homemakers do a lot of work, and women never get credit. The homemakers never do a lot of work because they take care of the family and the house and everything that they do. When you become an activist, it just makes your life so much richer. And so I just I praise God, thankful to the gentleman that got me into organizing. His name was Fred Ross Sr. Because of knowing him and getting involved, and I have had such an incredible world. I mean, an incredible life, because I have met so many great people, people like I mentioned, Jane Fonda, activist Hillary Clinton, President Obama, President Clinton, so many wonderful people, the Dalai Lama, Muhammad Yunus, who started the Grameen way of cooperatives, and my life has been so full. Martin Sheen, I could just go on and on and on, all these great people that I've met that never would have happened had I not been an activist. I invite everybody to become an activist because you never know where that path is going to take you and how many wonderful people you're going to meet, how many wonderful experiences you're going to have. And in spite of the criticisms that you are going to receive, and I know that when we get out there and we start doing active work, people say, are you crazy? What are you doing? Why aren't you home taking care of the kids? And we get that all the time. But, you just kind of look at that as some kind of persecution and think of those as blessings because you're doing the right thing because you're trying to help others. You're trying to help our world. And we have so many rewards that come our way that we cannot even imagine.
I'm honored that I was able to get involved in Emilio's campaign a few years back. And because of that, it led to the meeting of you. So thank you for being there. I want to thank you for coming to our event today. And I want to thank you for all that you've done for young women, girls, for our country. I really appreciate you even coming to speak at our Women's March this last January. And I hope that all of our best dreams come true after this election and that we're able to really have a prosperous world. Thank you, Dolores.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, we're going to have some rough times ahead, especially for women, because we don't know what's going to happen with the new Supreme Court nominee that's going to be anti-reproductive rights for women. And so now is our time as women to get out there and organize, call as many people as we can, call 5 people that you know, ask them to be sure to vote and to register to vote and to call 5 people that they know and have them call 5 other people so we can set up this huge network and get every woman that we know involved. And not only the women, but their husbands and their sons and their nephews and their daughters, everybody. And even all of us raging grannies out there, okay? We've got to go out there right now and start organizing, making sure that everybody that we know that they vote. If this is our time, we can do it. Sí se puede.
Sí se puede. Who's got the power?
Put your hands together, let's go. Sí se puede, sí se puede, sí se puede, sí se puede. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Sí se puede.
On behalf of the Women's March Kern County, we want to thank all our viewers and speakers for joining us. Women's March Kern County had its inaugural march on January of 2018, and we look forward to our 4th year with our march being held on January 23rd, 2021. This year is especially significant in that it is an election year. We encourage you, not only women, but everyone who is of voting age, to get out and make their voice heard. If you are carrying a megaphone, what will your message be? Change will only come when you take action, and we hope that you are creating the world of your dreams. Thank you.